everyone, and welcome back to season 3 of Commerce Meets Law, a podcast we talk about various commercial topics and how they interact with the legal profession. Today's episode features Sammy Rehman, a trainee solicitor at night, currently undertaking his first seat in residential development in the firm's Uxbridge office. Sammy holds a first-class LLB law degree from the University of Leicester and an LPC LLM with commendation from the University of Law, with a strong focus on M&A, corporate governance, directors' duties, employment, and commercial law. Whilst Sammy's story today and where we have started this with is filled with growth and positivity, it is also one of resilience and immense strength. A road traffic accident at the age of 4, which Sammy dives into during this episode, turned his life upside down, and not just his but also his family's. But whilst it did this at the same time, it also solidified his desire to become a lawyer and to be a part of the profession that was such a big part of his childhood, his teenage years, and also his adult life. Outside of law, Sammy has competed for many years in wheelchair basketball at both a national and international level, furthering his resilience, his discipline, and team-focused mindset, all skills needed not just for an elite athlete, but also for a solicitor, for a trainee solicitor, and for anyone working within the legal profession. In this episode, firstly, we discuss Sammy's interest growing up and why he chose to enter the legal profession, also talking about the accident, but also, all the other reasons why he wanted to be a lawyer and wanted to be a part of the legal world. We also talk about how his parents actually got him into wheelchair basketball to ensure that he could stay active, feel part of a community, and build his physical and mental strength. As well as this, we discuss, of course, his journey to getting a TC at night and his personal considerations as a wheelchair user when applying to law firms in terms of what he was looking for and also what his priorities were. And finally, a message from Sammy for anyone out there holding themselves back from pursuing their dreams due to the fear of rejection or feeling like their needs won't be met or that their needs won't be catered for in the dream profession that they wish to pursue. Just a quick request before we get into this conversation, and I really, really want you to listen to the whole thing. I'd really appreciate if you could kindly give the podcast a follow and a rating on Spotify or an Apple Podcast, wherever you're listening to this episode, as it really helps Commerce Meets Law reach more listeners. Without further ado, I thoroughly hope you enjoy this episode, and I'll see you right at the end. Hi, Sammy, and welcome to Commerce Meets Law. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Very, very excited to speak to you today and learn all about your journey into the law. Before we start, though, we always have an icebreaker on the podcast, which is, in your opinion, what is your superpower?
It's a great question. I would probably say my superpower is being able to keep my shoes squeaky clean. And yeah, no creases on them. So, because they don't touch the ground. So, yeah, so my shoes are in pretty good condition. So I guess that's a superpower that I have.
Yeah, I love that. That's not one we've had before, so definitely a unique superpower for sure. I want to start off with just talking about, your childhood and kind of growing up. Can you tell us a bit about what your main interests and passions were at the time?
So I think I've always been a sporty person. Someone who's always been energized and motivated to, play in those big games, play in those pressurized environments. So, from a young age, I was always been playing wheelchair basketball. That's been a really big passion of mine and taken up most of my weekends, especially during my childhood, my teenage, and just past previous years. And also during the week, I remember after school, I'd just be rushing to training sessions and just, putting in the work and then, driving down to, Plymouth and, all the way up to Scotland and things sometimes. And, playing across the country took up a large amount of my time. Um, so yeah, I think that's been a big passion of mine. I think I've really been a big fan of football. Watched a lot of football, really enjoyed um, watching my team Chelsea play. Been fortunate enough to go to a few games myself, so that's been quite nice. Um, Really enjoy socializing with my friends. Made some really good friends over the past couple of years through uni and through my school. So yeah, catching up with them is always brilliant. And yeah, I think I've always been quite career invested as well.
Mhm.
You know, being in the legal industry and getting to where I am has sort of been a really big goal of mine.
Absolutely. And having read a little bit about your story, I know that when everyone listening does hear about it, it's going to be super inspiring for them as well. But I want to go back to that first point when you mention wheelchair basketball. A lot of us, at the moment we're sitting down, people may not recognize that, or people may not know your story. So, as much as you feel comfortable sharing, could you tell us a little bit about that life-changing event in your life, and how that led to you, kind of ending up playing sport, but perhaps not in the way you envisioned?
Yeah, so I had a road traffic accident when I was young,
Mm,
age of 4, that left me unfortunately paralyzed from the waist down. So I had a spinal cord injury as a result. That changed my life pretty
mm,
drastically. I was quite a sporty person before that. I was always, running around and causing havoc,
yeah.
according to my mum. So I sort of, my parents wanted to get me sort of involved in a sport or something early on,
Mm,
because they felt that I'd really benefit from that. Um, Obviously, my life changed, and everything I did, you know, to the small things of getting changed to, getting in and out of the beds and things, that was all different to me. So doing a
mm,
sport would just improve my physical well-being, mental
mm,
well-being, but also give me some inspiration, to see people who are independent also and have day-to-day jobs, day-to-day lives, have families, sort of would inspire me and, motivate me to want to do the same and realize that, it is possible even though you've got a physical disability. Um, so I think, yeah, my parents were really big in getting me into sports. So I remember
mm,
when I was in the spinal unit at Stoke Mandeville Hospital, up in Aylesbury, was there for quite a few months. My mum dragged me to a taster session up in the Gutman Centre, which is I don't know if you know Stoke Mandeville Stadium. It's quite big on the Paralympics. History is quite big there. I remember going there and trying out different types of sports. Not being a fan of a couple. Can't really say which ones. I don't want to. I don't want
Always a diplomatic. That's how you know it's private lawyer.
to. Um, yeah, so I remember trying out a few sports, not liking some, enjoying some, and then going into wheelchair basketball. The sheer physicality of it, bashing into people's chairs, up and down the court, the energy, and then, having to push your chair from one side to the other and then having to shoot the basket and, you know, that element of physicality, speed, and just, all of those things culminated together. Sort of just was so inspiring to me. And I just remember going down and watching one of the adult games after my sort of session that I had, which was sort of basic. I was like, wow, I got to do this. I got to do this, Mom. It looks so much fun. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, it looked great. And but then again, I remember my mom saying to me like, "Oh, you didn't really enjoy that taster session, like are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, like, that's good. I want to get to that level. I want to see, I want to try and get to that level of, playing and bashing into people's chairs." And Mum was a bit, she wasn't sure at first. But I remember, talking to one of the coaches there and, fortunate to have got in contact after getting out of rehab and stuff. Hometown being in Coventry. I remember there was a local club, Coventry Wheelchair Basketball Association, that have now turned into Coventry Comets. I remember going down to a taster session when I was young, one Thursday, and just haven't been going back since. And just went for years and years every Thursday. Um, you know, with players who I grew up with have now gone on to do great things, Paralympic champions, and
Mm.
gone on to win multiple champions and championships and gone across the country. It's just yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, brilliant. Just to do something which, you know, you got put into from a, particularly tough experience and just to be going back ever since is just and just the life lessons that I've learned from it is just incredible. If it wasn't for basketball, I don't think I'd be in the position I'm in both from
Yeah.
an independence perspective as a wheelchair user, but also career-wise, it's improved all aspects of my life.
So much in that. I think firstly, kudos to your parents for converting what is such a tough and harrowing experience and such kind of a life-changing event. And actually, you at the age of 4, for you that's your reality now for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
And instead taking that in the positive and actually thinking, no, how can we ensure that you're still being able to passion, kind of fulfill your passion and be interested in sport, which they'd already seen, and in whichever way that is possible, and looking beyond that. So yeah, that's just incredible. And obviously for you, that's been life changing in such a positive way, having come out of such a negative experience, which is amazing. And I think there are so many, whether that's lawyers or people who've been athletes or been in sports in the past, and there's so many things that you take away from being part of a team and having that discipline and learning that, like you say, you can be independent even if you have a disability, whether that's physically or mentally. I guess speaking a bit about the career side, I think a lot of people, have an interest in law, and I think I read in your article as well that you always had an interest in it as well. But from your experience, having seen it up and close, with having seen a personal injury case for yourself and therefore interacting with the legal system, what sort of, I guess, challenges did you see? And on the flip side, did it kind of solidify your interest in law and wanting to do that yourself?
so yeah, obviously said I had a road traffic accident at the age of 4,
Mm,
that I paralyzed. I was in a personal injury case. I was in a long running case for years and years,
mm,
that really involved a lot of frequent contact with solicitors and barristers, to, find the best solution, for myself. Um, and, during, it being between, quite difficult years of my life, gaining
mm,
independence, being through, primary school and things, and, um, was really difficult and challenging. And, the impact that the solicitors and barristers had, to find the positive solution for me. Um, and also just the impact and advice that they gave me in those years really wanted to motivate me to want to go into the legal industry in the same way and provide meaningful impact, to people.
yeah,
And use the law to really do that, just in the same way as it did for myself, because the confidence that it didn't just bring me but brought my parents, was huge. That case was emotionally challenging, but the ending and just resolution from that was life changing. My mom, she was really invested in her teaching. She wanted to be a teacher. She
yeah,
just got funding for her teaching course just before my accident happened. And obviously, when my accident happened, her career, had to be on pause and unfortunately had to end.
yeah,
Just to see, that my life changed and I couldn't do, anything myself, particularly being at a young age. And um, my life basically transforming, it unfortunately meant hers had to transform. And that was really difficult. Obviously, my dad still had to work at that point as well. And, my dad had to juggling work and things was really just, it was really challenging. Um, and yeah, just the impact that had on me and just my parents really wanted to motivate me to pursue this legal career and do it for them. And do it well, not just do it for myself, but do it for them as well. Just that case had such a big impact on me. You know, and I just remember, talking to the solicitors and barristers, and them always saying, particularly towards the end of the case, they were like, well, "What do you want to be when you grow up? Do you have any idea, Sam? Do you have any idea?" And I was just like, I want to be in law. I want to be a solicitor. That's what I
yeah,
want to be. That's what I want to
yeah,
be. I may not be at a position now, and I may not have the confidence, I may not have the skill set now, but I want to get there. I want to do it.
yeah,
And yeah, it's that that sort of wording that I said to them, and just that line that I said to myself and said to them, is just stayed with me as an inspiration ever since to do it.
It's incredible, and I'm sure that your parents are, so proud that, you've managed to achieve that, like you said, not just for yourself, but also for them and everything that they had to, sacrifice unwillingly in the process. But, I'm sure now they can see that that's gonna pay off, and it's gonna help you get to where you are, and that's amazing. And I think that, anyone listening who suffers with any sort of whether that's a disability or something that they feel like is holding them back, and they feel like actually people will see this as a hindrance. It means that I may not have a shot at the legal profession. When you did kind of end up going into law and decided you wanted to do this, did you have any conversations with anyone who said, this might be a bit difficult for you, or was trying to discourage you, or did you, kind of overall feel like there were people mostly who were very encouraging of it at the time?
So I think that's a bit of an interesting question. I think for me, I didn't really have any particular experience with coming to people who were in the legal profession with a physical disability. I think the
Mm,
visibility around that um,
yeah,
is a bit hidden a lot, and I
yeah,
don't think it's clear as much. Me growing up and wanting to pursue a legal career, I didn't really know anyone who was in the legal industry that had a
mm,
physical disability, and I think there is people there, but I don't think it's visible, and people aren't speaking enough. And I think what
yeah,
that's doing is that's hindering the confidence of people who it's not even the legal industry, it's any profession. It's
yeah,
it's knowing that you can do it by having those role models in place and having people who have done it to and that can only be with people speaking up. Um and I think me growing up, I didn't really know that was possible because there
yeah,
wasn't people speaking up to say that there were and showing that there were.
mm,
So I think that was really difficult. But for me, I was really, really grateful to have, you know, people around me that was just so supportive and encouraging that were on the journey. And I think that links into people to say that you can do it.
yeah,
People to say you can do it. I've had fortunate to have, you know, such amazing and supportive parents that have been on the journey with me. To say that you can do this, you can do that, despite your disability. Having amazing friends, fortunate to have great, great friends who I've had from secondary school who I still talk to now, who are doing great things themselves, and them to be on the journey with me, and to go through the lows and go through the highs. Um, and to be in a position I am now is amazing. And to have coaches that were really big with not just my development on the pit, on the floor, on the basketball floor, but also in my career. That was really
yeah,
big. Um, they have been on the journey a lot. My lecturers, my mentors, my school teachers,
yeah,
um, even my solicitors that were involved in my case, they have been big part of my journey, and getting advice from them and just support from them just to say you can do this. And obviously, I've had doubters, I've had a lot of doubters, with,
mm,
I say with like with anyone, to say, "Oh, are you sure you can do this?" Particularly in my younger age where I wasn't really independent in myself, I wasn't able to do things myself. You know, and they were thinking, "Oh, are you sure you can do this? The legal profession is
mm.
so demanding, it's so competitive. Are you sure? Is this a step too far? Do you think this is okay? I've had that loads. I've had that loads. Um, and the fact that, I've had that supportive people and, you know, them encouraging to have a resilient mindset, is I'm grateful. I'm just really grateful to have that supportive people. It's particularly in a profession where like I said, I just don't think that there's enough people out there with a physical disability that are speaking up. And like I said, it's affecting the confidence of other people that who maybe want to get into it, particularly with a physical disability.
Absolutely. And I think, I'm so glad that you had that supportive network around you, where that was your parents, your general family, your friends, your coaches. But I think that's why representation is so important, because not everyone has that, and not everyone, even if people do want to be supportive, they may say those things that you mentioned of like, are you sure? Not necessarily out of malice, but just thinking, well, we don't know anyone who's done that, so we don't want you to go in and get in harm's way. And that it's not always intentionally, kind of trying to put them down. It might just be out of kind of care and concern for them. But I think that's why, if you can point to someone and say, hey, look, if they can do it, I can do it. I think that's why, and that's where the representation is so important, and having those role models, for sure. And like you say, there are so many people, not just in the legal profession, but outside, who do have physical disabilities and do great work. But I think they need to speak up more, and we need to speak more about them. And hopefully this conversation can be somewhat of a start to that. Talking a bit about, I guess, your kind of application journey. You finished your degree, and you were doing really, really well. But I guess there's also that aspect of applying for TCs or VAC schemes, and at that point, revealing disabilities and revealing that you may need adjustments. What was like kind of sort of that journey for you, and did you face any major challenges in sort of that application journey?
Yeah, so application journey was an experience.
Yeah.
I'm sure with a lot of people, the
Yeah.
legal profession is demanding, it's challenging, it's tough. The
Yeah.
competition that you're up with is tough. Um,
Mm.
for me, I was fortunate enough to have a internship at 17 years of age with Pinsent Masons, which was a real eye opener for myself.
Yeah.
Particularly being in my A levels, um, and getting that sort of experience of being in a law firm and being like, wow, this is amazing. This is
Yeah.
great. This is outstanding. That really, was an eye opener for myself. Bright lights in London and things. That was a really cool experience. I was grateful for that. But in terms of legal sort of experience. I didn't actually have any legal experience prior. Well, after that, I had no paralegal experience. I've had no legal jobs. Going into my training contract was my sort of my first actual office job, which is quite crazy me saying this, and to a lot of people it was quite crazy them realizing, wow. Yeah, it was challenging. I think for me, I think I think what I gathered was my sort of success in training contract applications, they only really started to really elevate and progress, I think, um, as I became more independent in myself.
Mm.
And I think that's always been the biggest goal of mine is to become independent myself. Whether that was being independent myself of, you know, getting around myself, managing myself, living with myself. It also was
Wow.
career
Yeah.
as well. I think,
Mm.
being able to live out, being able to get around myself, being able to
Mm.
drive, being able to do all those things, I think really help with putting confidence in other people,
Mm.
and confidence in myself. And I think gives, employers potential more confidence to say, oh wow, this guy's great. I think he can handle that because, there's one side to it of doing the job, but there's also one side of being able to manage yourself, and that's something which, as a wheelchair user, is quite difficult to do.
Yeah.
And being able to show that, and do that, I think is is tough. So I think over the years, I think I was fortunate enough to get a first class degree, and travel across the country for basketball, do that and gain independence from that. I think as years went on, I think me as a person, I think was strengthened and strengthened and strengthened, to the point that, wow, this guy's doing this guy's doing that, this guy's doing this, and he has a disability himself. He seems like he's so independent. Um,
Yeah.
and that motivated me and put confidence in myself, to put everything and be
Mm.
me in the applications, which I think is really, really important. I think people really neglect that is to be yourself. And if you're yourself, then you will attract the firm for you. That's the way I see it. Um, And I think so for me, I think being independent and being more independent, I think that's been the biggest thing for me in my success of training contracts, because my progression, I think for a lot of other people with physical disabilities, having sort of past jobs, I think is quite difficult. I think because of gaining independence in yourself, really
Yeah.
compromising a lot of the years, particularly in, your early years, teenage years, try to become independent in yourself, compromise a lot of your time. And, it might be challenging for a person with a disability to, gain a job, say in retail or gain that sort of nine to
Yeah.
five job thing,
Yeah.
particularly alongside, on the weekends or something, at university or at school, because of them, lacking that independence, them trying to
Mm.
build that up and, trying to become independent. So yeah, I think for me it was a bit different. And obviously, me wanting to really pursue a basketball career, I think was that in itself was timing that I think was difficult as well. So I did my legal practice course. I finished that in August 23. So I've always, you know, when I was young, I not just wanted to get into the legal industry and, excel in that, but I also really wanted to, you know, excel in basketball.
Yeah.
Um, because that's had such a big impact in my life as we've talked about. So I wanted to do both, and I felt like, that time was the right time. And that was a bit of risks in itself. With the SQE coming in, with the LPC drifting out, the legal industry getting more competitive, and obviously me not having, previous legal experience, was that a hindrance, and taking a gamble and that in itself was a bit of a risk, but I'm glad I took that risk and was fortunate enough to have great experiences with the London Titans, which was a great team and a great experience to be in. Um, and yeah, so I think my challenges to get to a training contract, being independent, really improved not just the confidence of employers, but also confidence in myself. And I think
Mm.
that had a really big impact on me being me in my training contract applications.
I think that's so important for you to, shed a light on because someone might see you now and think, oh wow, look, he's a trainee at this firm and he's done it. But actually it's so many years of, you doing one thing, one step at a time every single day to try and make yourself more independent, to try and do more things yourself. And like you said, with every step, gain a bit more self-confidence that if you can do this, then you can tackle, things as a trainee, as a lawyer, and therefore enjoy and balance both your work and your life and everything kind of independently. And I think it's so important for people to be able to hear that and know that that itself is also a sign of strength and that that's something you can talk about in your applications, because I think for a lot of people maybe their training contract is their first office job, and even if they've had retail or other experience in the past, they may think, oh, surely that's not relevant, but actually it is. And like for you, the thing that was relevant was your sporting career and kind of all the things you did beforehand. I think that that's important for people to hear because legal experience isn't all that easy to get, and most of us don't really have that when we are applying for TCs for sure. And talking a little bit about your training and your kind of journey at night, can you tell us a bit about what attracted you to the firm initially and a bit of an insight into how the TC's been so far?
I was playing with London during the year in which I applied to Knights. Well, I actually applied to the firm that it actually got acquired by Knights. Um,
Ah,
so that was an interesting experience. So I
yeah.
remember being midway through season, and me realizing I got to get back into the legal industry. I got to get back into the sector because the SQE is coming in, and the LPC sort of drifting out. So I
Yeah.
gotta do it because otherwise, time's running out. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I remember, as I think a lot of, legal applicants are, going online and searching, firms and this and that, and what firms are available. And particularly for me, I wanted something, as soon as possible. Um,
Yep.
I wanted something prompt, um, and things just as soon as possible, and ones that would cater for the LPC. Um, and was looking around, and obviously it being my first office job as well, and being the first time that I sort of would potentially move out, and be on
Mm.
my own, not having at university, like my university experience, having sort of friends on standby and having, friends around, oh, if
Yeah.
I'm stuck with something, I'd have my friends say, "Oh, could you help me do this? Could you help me do that?"
Yeah.
It was my first sort of experience to live on my own and deal with
Mm.
challenges in itself. So, I was looking around to see what would provide a balance for me to live out, because I realized maybe living in actual City of London might be difficult for me to get around,
Yeah.
um, and things. So I was looking around, and seeing, what would be a really good, reputable firm to work at, but also
Mm.
give me the balance of being able to manage my disability and manage, living out and it being the first time for me. So looking
Yeah.
around, and seeing, areas, maybe around outskirts of London, Greater London, that would, provide me with that. So looking around and was come across, the firm that's now Knights, and progressing with that application. Really, really love the work they did. So for me, all of my education up to date has been sort of corporate commercial based. Um,
Yeah.
you know, throughout my LPC and also my law degree as well as my LLM that came with the LPC, it's always been corporate commercial based, whether, I did international commercial arbitration, competition law, M&A, employment law, um, did my dissertation on directors' duties, company law, and yeah. So was
Mm.
always my interest was sort of around those areas. So I wanted sort of a firm that really had expertise within those areas.
Mm.
So that's what really attracted me to the firm, really particularly, especially was really inspired by some of the work that they did at the time. Um, I think they were working on an M&A transaction that was, to do with some Silicon Valley leaders and AI, which was pretty cool to do research about and to learn about. Um,
Yeah.
so, I was fortunate enough to progress the application with them, um, and to do an interview with themselves, within their Uxbridge old office now, which they've fortunate to have moved to a really cool office now. Um, and talking with, my interviewer, she wouldn't mind me saying this, Sarah Jackson, um, head of, well, partner in commercial litigation. Um, she was just amazing to speak about with her. Her specializing in, directors' duties and shareholder disputes, and discussing my dissertation at the time with her was a really, really cool experience,
Yeah.
and was a big eye opener to me. You know, and her kind words of encouragement and sort of her speaking about her background and things really inspired me to wanna to get into the firm as well. Um, and and even just come back to my point about supportive inclusion and just
Mm.
the firm was so supportive on me on that assessment day, and was really was really encouraging, and just they were helping out with car parking, helping out with me getting around. They were just making sure everything was in place and everything. And just that encouragement went a long way. That sort of,
Mm.
supportiveness really does take you a long way as a disabled user and a wheelchair user. All the small things was just really nice and really considerate. And yeah, that was amazing. When I got the offer, I remember that day. That was an amazing day. After careful consideration, I accepted the offer, and yeah, here I am. So yeah, I think, yeah, that journey was crazy because I just remember that day of accepting that offer, and I was just like, yeah, I just wasn't sure if I was gonna get it. If I'm all honesty,
Yeah. I don't
you
think
know.
anyone ever is.
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird.
Yeah.
It was a really weird day that day. I remember just going up to my mom quite literally, that literally 5 minutes before the call, and I was like, "Mom, I don't think I got it. I genuinely don't think I got it." Like, this is after my assessment center, and 2 weeks after, I was thinking, I haven't got a call. I don't think I've got it, Mom. Like it didn't. I don't think it went well. I haven't got a call yet. Like what's gonna happen? My mom was like, chill, it's okay, you've got time. Like,
Yeah.
and then I got a call and I was just like, Mom, this could be them. So went in and put it on speaker and, them saying, you know, we would like to offer you. I was just like, and just
Yeah.
yeah, it was a crazy day and grateful to be in a position now. And obviously, like I said, it was a firm that got acquired by Knight, so it's a bit of insecurity that in itself as well,
Mm.
because it was the week of my assessment center was the week that it got announced that the firm was getting acquired.
Oh wow.
So I was,
That's a lot going. Yeah.
yeah, so I was practicing, why the firm, why this, why that, and I was in the back of my mind, I was thinking, oh,
Hold
is
on.
the firm going to be
Yeah.
changing? But no, everything worked out perfectly. Knights is an amazing firm who are um, growing crazy, are doing really, really well, and are changing the legal sector, and so is supportive. That's one thing which I can say for certain is they are so supportive with me, and so encouraging, um, and couldn't be thankful. Um, and yeah. Grateful to be around such supportive and experienced people who have been in the industry for long periods of time and to learn off them and learn about their life experiences and things are really interesting, particularly at this office where you've got people who have been working with each other for years and years, to the point that they were obviously, it was a previous acquisition and things, but they were trainees together and you know, and now up to the point that they're partners now is crazy. It's it's so cool to hear their experiences and their sort of background and comes back to my point about they've stayed because they've loved the people that they've worked with,
Yeah.
have a genuine relationship with them, and I think that in itself is so nice to hear. Um, Especially with how demanding the legal industry is, as I presume and a lot of people know probably watching this.
Mm.
So to have that sort of bond, to say that, I've stayed because, you stayed and I've developed such a good relationship with you and, that sense of family and community is amazing.
There's a lot of talk now about their firms being more inclusive and not just in the legal profession, but in professions in general. But I think when you can see that in practice and you can see that there's a reason that people have stayed for this long because they enjoy the people they work with, they enjoy the culture, and despite having that the acquisition and having such a big kind of change from the outside from an organizational perspective, actually the people there has meant that it hasn't changed your perception, it hasn't changed the firm that you applied to, even though it may have changed name or it may have changed, the structure of it from the outside. And I think that's just incredible, especially if you feel like, at the start you felt like, oh wait, there's no representation, I can't see someone like me. But when you get that support, you know that there is a place for you here and you can sort of progress, which I know, especially for a lot of people listening, would be so encouraging. I'm very conscious of time, so I don't want to take up too much. I feel like we've spoken about so many different topics, but I do want to talk about your role with WizKids, particularly because I found it really interesting of kind of looking at the demographic of supporting young wheelchair users, which is so important because in order to get them into the workforce, in order to encourage them and pursue the career they want. So, can you tell us a little bit about sort of your role and within the charity and some of the work that they do?
WizKids has been a big impact for me. So when I was going through my rehabilitation, particularly at, Step Mandible and things, I was always doing participating in events with WizKids. Whether
Mm.
that was Wheelchair Skills Day. Wheelchair Skills is really big as a wheelchair user, learning how to get up a curb and, learning how to do particular things. It was all
Wow.
sort of
Yeah.
organized by WizKids and, a lot of people in the charity have really helped with that. Um,
Mm.
helping me, learn those things, and also with funding as well. Obviously for wheelchairs, and sports chairs, that was a really big thing for me. Um, Being access to funding and thing was really, really important, and crucial, as the wheelchairs that were involved were quite expensive financially.
Right.
And being able to have WizKids provide and help with the funding was really key,
Mm,
particularly in my younger years, where I needed particular adaptations to wheelchairs in order for me to um, sit comfortably, but also with my basketball chair to perform on the floor. So yeah, that in itself really helped me with my independence as a wheelchair user and growing up, and made me realize that I would love to be an ambassadorial role for WizKids, and help promote more young people um gain the independence and achieve the things that they want to do.
yeah.
So I am an ambassador role, where at the moment, I think I'm trying to plan a few more talks with special needs schools and schools, to give talks to them, and help promote more people. Um, so I would always, at my Stoke Mandeville Hospital, I'd always, uh, help with, people who have just come into the ward, um, who may have a new disability, and help them with, challenges that they face, and, provide them with advice. So that was my sort of role that I had, um, and just sort of be that ambassador and be that sort of role model to say that you've done it and that you can do the same.
Hmm.
The ambassadorial role has given me not just the funding and, access to funding, which has changed my life, but also given me
Mm,
the platform to be able to speak to other wheelchair users and give them, you know, um, sort of advice that they're looking for. Because it's even for me when I was growing up, it's all good and well, getting maybe advice from doctors and nurses to say, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, but it sort of comes across as maybe sort of a nag, especially when I was young, oh, you got to do this,
yeah,
you got to do that. Whereas if you've had someone who's done it themselves as a wheelchair user, maybe
yeah,
even with a higher disability and with a worse disability, and they've done it themselves, it
mm,
makes the other wheelchair user or someone with a disability motivated and, more confident to say, I can do that as well.
yeah,
That's really big. I've come across that so much. Everywhere I've gone, just being able to speak up and being able to talk about whiz kids and being able to say, look, there are people out there that can do that, and supportive
mm,
charities like that can help you. Um, and being able to help out with, wheelchair events, and being able to organize, speaking events, at my convenience, and being able to speak, to people, and access to that through the charity really has really helped with that. And I can't be thankful for WizKids enough. Um, and they've been a big part of the journey. They really want to support more wheelchair users and people with disabilities to just get into professions and support them to achieve their goals.
you highlighted such an important point there that actually charities like WizKids and others support you with those hidden costs that people may not think about. You know, there's such small things that all those adjustments that you need to make as a wheelchair user that, other people don't face, and therefore maybe spaces aren't made for that necessarily, or you need extra adjustments. I think those things cost money. So obviously, whilst it takes an emotional toll and a physical toll, there is obviously a financial side to that as well. And I think charities like that really help wheelchair users to focus on the rehabilitation part without having to worry about how much it's going to cost, or the kind of the financial toll that it takes as well. And like you say, to provide representation from people who are in the same position, and not from just doctors and nurses who, whilst they care about you, they can only sympathize to such an extent because they're not in that exact position. And you spoke about speaking events. I think just to finish us off, for someone who's listening, who is either faced with a disability, or for any reason feels held back from the profession that they want to enter because they feel like other people have to make adjustments for them, or they're not the norm of what fits in. What would you say to someone like that listening?
If I could say a couple of, I could go on for a while.
Yeah, it could be an entire story.
But
Yeah.
if I had to say it, just do it. Don't hold back. Don't
Yeah.
just do it. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I stand by that. If
Yeah.
you just be you, if you just be you and just put yourself out there, that in itself can take you far. I
Mm,
promise you. You don't need to have particular skills. You don't need to have particular experiences. You don't need to have
mm,
a particular anything. If you just be you and you just put yourself out there, that can take you to where you want to be. I promise you. Um, and I didn't think that was possible during my teenage years because I felt like, especially with, competitive industries like the legal industry, you needed that X factor, but you
mm,
don't. You don't need it. You just need to be you and be yourself and put yourself out there. You will find the right company, the right firm, the right person for you. And
mhm.
I think that can be with any industry and anything you do in life. If you just be you and just 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 go for it, that will take you there. And just whatever problem that you come across, deal with it in the moment.
Mm.
You can plan all you want. You can do this, you can do that. Particularly as a wheelchair user, just relish being in the moment and take the challenges as they come.
I think you being you is the X factor. There's nothing else needed, and I think that's the message that you are such a clear example of. But on that note, Sammy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It felt like we could go on forever, and there were so many
Yeah.
things to discuss. But you've set an incredible example, and the representation that perhaps you didn't have or you didn't see. I hope that someone listening, you can be that person for them. So thank you for doing that, and wishing you all the best for the rest of your training contract.
Thank you very much. Grateful for the opportunity.
And on that note, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and a massive, massive shout out to Sammy for coming on Commerce Meets Law. I discovered a bit of behind the scenes. If you've made it this far as the little treat, is that I discovered Sammy's story on the Law Society webpage. Which, if you want to find out stories about incredible kind of journeys in the legal profession, definitely check that out. As you've probably heard from this episode, it's so important that people like Sammy and people that feel like they're not represented in the legal profession, they can't see people like them, that these sorts of stories come out, because there are so many incredible people with physical, mental, any types of disabilities or challenges doing incredible, incredible things across various professions, not just the legal one. And sometimes it feels like, we can't see them because their stories aren't being heard. And I think that's why role models and representations of all kinds is so important. Inclusivity isn't just it's not one-sided. It's not just about firms or organizations doing it, but it's also about the role that each of us can play in ensuring that we not only share our stories, but that we help others share theirs too. And that's always been the goal of this podcast, and it's always been the goal that I have had from when I started it 3-4 years ago now. So I hope that you resonated with the story on some level, even if it's not the exact circumstances. But I hope that it made you feel inspired, motivated, and just made you feel like you can do it. You can go out there and do it, as Sammy explained, and so beautifully put during the episode. So these sorts of episodes always just they make me feel so inspired, and they make me feel like I want to do this more, and I want to do this again, and I want to share more stories like this. So I really hope that that's the feeling that you walked away with from this episode as well. If you did enjoy this episode, or you had any comments for me, any feedback, please do let me know by emailing commercemeetslaw@gmail.com, or with a DM on Instagram at commercemeetslaw. And you can also reach out to us on our website, which will be linked down in the description. Finally, for extra SOMA content, do check out the Commerce Meets Law YouTube channel and our TikTok. For now, take care, goodbye, and I'll see you very soon on the next episode.